thing just died on me. All right. And I was into talking about these comic books and how amazing graphic novels are. Like there's a couple of joints out there that are just super dope. And I was talking about the brilliant writer Jodorowsky, and also I was talking about the NCAL, and then I was starting to go into the Meta Barons, and that's when I got cut off. And I was talking about how the Meta Barons are the actual warriors of the multiverse. They are the highest feared assassins, warriors out there. All right. Now, what's so interesting about them is that they didn't start off like that. They didn't start off as these non-emotional beings. They didn't start off like that. They actually came from a planet that was actually their natural resources was it had like this anti-gravity. um Let me see if I could find when they're talking about their planet. It had like this anti-gravity minerals that was from their planet, right? And everybody in the universe was trying their best to take their resources, their natural resources. So they were in the beginning, a very civilized uh, planet. Um, yes, right here, as you could see. May see if you could show if I could show you this. As you could see, they're trying to mine some of their natural resources from their planet, and it got to a place where they went through so much violence of so many beings trying to come and harvest their natural resources that they eventually became one of the greatest warriors and killers on this whole throughout the whole multiverse. So, and again, the way they would train them was coming from a place where cut off all emotion, you know, to the point that your biggest test is that you're gonna have to fight your teacher, the one ahead of you, your father. And if they kill the father, then therefore they are the next Meta Baron. It's a twist towards the end, because towards the end they have to one of the main Meta Barons have to learn how to come back into its heart center again, into this heart chakra again, which became their level of enlightenment, or coming through, for their next level of how things are going to unfold in their universe. All right. um deep book, and this is part of, again, the NCAL. Now, the book that I wanted y'all to discuss with you was really this joint, and I read it like about a week ago, and I have to say it took me a couple of days to come down from reading this material. I said to myself, I was like, whoever wrote this book, whoever whoever created this, has been on the other side. No doubt. Because when I was reading it, it felt like I was on a psychedelic journey. It felt like I took a couple of puffs of my sacred sacrament, Bufo. You know what I mean? I was like, who did this writing? And whoever did this knows what's going on. You know what I mean? So it's called The Book of Magic. You know what I mean? By Neil Gaiman. Gaiman, all right? Now, Neil Gaiman, or Gaiman, is an excellent writer. He's an excellent writer. You know what I mean? I give people props where props are due. I give people flowers where The flowers are deserved. I seen how dope he was as a writer when he first came across writing the novel American Gods. You know, and if people aren't familiar with American Gods, dope, right? Dope novel. Hands down. We're talking about Shadow Moon, which is a very savior type figure. Even if we want to say Jesus type figure, Haru type of figure, Horus type figure, um, and him being ushered under the wing by Wednesday. You know, was it Wednesday? No, Thursday. Oh no, I'm getting shit confused. Well, yeah, it's Wednesday, and which is really uh, what's his name in the Norse mythology. So we got Loki, we got Thor, but then we have the father, their father, which is what's his name? Come on, somebody put it in the chat. What's the dude's name? Who's dealing with the Norse mythology? He'll come to me. But nevertheless, that's who Wednesday is, right? Shadow Moon doesn't understand that this is his father. Shadow Moon doesn't even understand how he's going to play a big part in the unfolding of the gods. How they deal with the old gods versus the new gods, and the new gods representing technology, you know. And I think it was just brilliantly written. You know what I mean? Wednesday coming from a place of saying like, listen, this all deals with energy. And if we are going to exist in this future, then we have to understand that we're not being fed. And by being fed is from the etheric food of our believers, of their prayers, of their daggone of their daggone sacrifices, their worship. That's how we eat. This is what they're saying with along the gods, right? Um, Even there's one point in American Gods when they're talking about Easter, the holiday Easter, right? And Esther is not, Wednesday's like, listen, this guy named Jesus, he's taking all your energy, he's taking all your worshipers. This day used to be a day for you, for the spring equinox. You know what I mean? Um, so Neil Gaiman, he's always been a dope writer, in my opinion. Then I read something else about him. I forget the name of the book. I be bar they be thinking it's a library, which I'm very gracious on letting my friends or even my family borrow my books and stuff. But that god damn it, man, at least bring it back. You know what I mean? Bring back the joint. You know what I mean? I can't even talk because I had a couple of books out the library. I ain't returned joints. But anyways, it was another one that he wrote, and it was about this kid being raised in a cemetery because they had these assassins come and they killed his mother and his father, and the child, walked out. It was a young child walked out into the streets. They didn't know there was a child in the house. The killers, they left, and the child walked out, and they end up walking to the cemetery, and the whole book was about these ghosts or these spirits raising this child. So he's a very interesting writer, in my opinion. And like I said, I wanted to bring highlight. I know this book is pretty old. This book came out in the early '90s, if I'm not mistaken, and this was way before Harry Potter. And some people would say that the writer of Harry Potter actually bit the ideas from this book, you know. Um okay, I'm getting some comments here. Somebody says William Wright says hi, peace. What's going on? What's good? Yep. Somebody's talking about American Gods, how the series is fire too. And someone says Brother Dooley loved journeying through the invisible by Hakumak, a great book. Okay, I'm gonna have to look that up. Journeying through the Invisible. Okay, I'm gonna look that up. Word. Um, so I'm looking at this, and this is, the whole thing with Harry Potter, and we know that, this is not really anyone's idea. There's really no new ideas. There's a lot, like they say, there's nothing new under the sun. There's a lot of things that could put your own spin on it, but the idea of an apprentice, a young a young person learning under the tutelage of magicians aren't nothing new. That's not a new story at all. Um, you recommended that book, and I got it. Oh, The Invisibles. Yeah, 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 yeah. But that I by Hakumak. I think it's you're talking about a different author. That's why I was like, yo, should I gotta check that out. The Invisibles, yeah. Man, that's my joint right there, man. Um, yeah, The Invisibles. Yeah. There's a whole bunch of joints I got with The Invisibles here. And I don't mean to I have to backtrack on that because you know, uh, they brought it up. Some Pavel Zodiac L brought it up. So I got to bring it back up. You know what I mean? Be on, listen, listen, y'all. And I know I don't supposed to be on here that long, but I haven't been on the live in a minute. I've been taking care of my life and I'm in love, y'all. I'm in a new relationship almost 2 years and it's been amazing. So I haven't been online like that. I've been taking care of myself, doing how to do a lot of shadow work. These last, before I met my love, the past 5 years were hard for a brother. My mom's died, transitioned, a lot of things happened. My marriage, went sour, but me and my children's mother still best of friends, you know what I mean? But it was a lot. And I was dealing with a lot and still trying to put on a smile on my face for everybody, you know what I mean? And while I'm walking through the changes in my life. And and it's hard when you're doing healing work or somebody so-called leader in the community and people are still tugging at you and wanted you to do things for them while you're going through stuff. It's hard. And I have to say during that time there was even a lot of mistakes that I went through. You know what I mean? A lot of hearts that I broke because I was trying to fill the void of what I was going through. So long story short, learned a lot. I feel like I'm at this new stage in my life where feel we're like the old Dooley's coming back, and I feel blessed about that. So excuse me if I haven't been on live or sharing for a minute because I've been doing a lot of inner work for myself too, and even sitting with the sacrament like that 5-MeO vape pen, man, man, it made my work a little much more easier on the spirit plane. Been learning a lot on the other side on certain things, which I'm feeling very, very grateful for. Yeah, and doing a lot of writing myself, you know. So there's gonna be some things that your boy's gonna be putting out for the family. So I look forward to that. Okay, somebody's saying something else. Journey Through the Invisible by Hamamak and David L. Crow, as told by Peruvian shaman. I love that book. Oh, you're talking about another. Okay, yes, 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 yes. Do I catch up with you on Facebook? Okay, okay, gotcha. He's remarking another book. I'm sorry about the confusion. I was just saying The Invisibles. Um, this book, this whole series was another jewel. Beyond the Encal, the Invisibles, awesome, awesome, awesome writing. Um, it's by this guy named Grant Morrison. All right, he's the author to this one, and Grant Morrison also deals with chaos magic. You know, um, very Morrison's a very interesting writer. He's a European dude. He talked about how on a magical level that he was writing himself into the stories as one of the characters. Mob King, actually, one of the characters. And there was a point in his comic as he was being tortured through these secret society type cats, and the level of torture that the character was going on in the comic book leaked in on his life. You know what I mean? Yo, because if you look at the book, Mob King looks a little like Grant Morrison. You know what I mean? He could, like, on an artistic level, it's like, wow, he literally put his own image into the comic book, So dealing with the law of attraction, even being careful of what you're putting out there, becomes like a boomerang and come boomerang back on your ass. So it was like he's going through this torture in the book, and next thing you know, he's having these symptoms. He's getting sick. All these things are happening to his body. It was, and when he was done with that chapter and he got away, it's like his body was like feeling better. It was very weird. He was saying, the author, but it's a so-called group of mystics. All right, people that weren't really accepted by society per se, and these psychics from around the world who gathered together to deal with the Illuminati, to deal with these secret, the hidden hand, to deal with the cabal, to deal with those one percenters, and coming from a place of the manipulators. And what's so interesting in this book is that this particular comic is dealing with above the so-called Illuminati, if we want to say that. Above that, they talk about the ones that they serve, which in the comic book, the author talks about the archons. And if anybody is familiar with the Gnostic teachings, they would understand that there's this whole thing of the archons, and when you come from even the teachings within those scriptures, they talk about these deluded self what's the right word, self delusional type of beings that believe they are the rightful powers of this physical realm here, right? So we talk about, like, even within the Gnostic tradition, Sophia, which Sophia is one of the so-called the youngest of these older beings who fell as a symbolic gesture of what happens to spirit when it falls from spirit going into flesh or going into the physical realm. So Sophia is a feminine force aspect of God, where she realized that even within her wisdom that she's not the all pervading consciousness force, but it's this demiurge or these archons that through their own self delusion are the so-called creators of this realm, and therefore want to manipulate the beings within this realm, right? So these so-called Illuminati dudes, they serve these archons, and they show it in this comic. It's very, very interesting. But one of the characters on here is part of the mystic squad of those who are dealing with this so-called this evil force. So, for instance, the one on the cover there, she's a tranny, right? And this is showing her in South America on the pyramid. And what's so interesting is that the grandmother's on the side, on her family, on his family side, it was always women becoming the healers in the family. So the grandmother was pissed because they were saying that her son-in-law could not get her daughter pregnant to have a young girl to carry on that tradition, through the female bloodline. So they tried to trick the gods by sending this little boy on the pyramid and actually cutting his private to make it, try to trick the gods to make like it's a little girl having her first period. The book is crazy. I tell you, the book is off the chain. I ain't even gonna lie. There's a lot of things to this, to the Invisibles. And there's a lot of high science in it if you know how to read between the lines on here. But that's a whole nother thing. All right. Um, well, that's a whole nother thing. So back to the Book of Magic, all right, by Neil Gaiman, right? This book right here is about this young boy here, right? He's a skateboarder, regular kid, and it's a story about these magicians. It's four of them that confront him, and are some of them are time travelers, and they realize that he's going to be a deep magician, you know, and one of them actually wants to off him because he was like, listen, I seen within the multiverse, one of the realities in the multiverse, this little kid's gonna be a problem. He's actually gonna be taking a negative turn, and it's gonna be detrimental for a lot of folk. So this one is like, yo, we should take him out. You know, I think that's Mr. Hold on, me. Let me get them right, because one of them is John Constantine, and if anybody's hip to John Constantine, he's an anti-hero, who deals with the spirit world, who doesn't go by the rules. Let me see, if I could see him. Yeah, I think it's Mr. E. Yeah, Mr. E is the one that's like, yo, let's take him out. You know what I mean? Because he's seen an alternate universe, a parallel universe where this kid's gonna be a problem, right? Um, but basically, they confront the young man, and they basically says, there's realities beyond this place, and you have potential. You know what I mean? And if you're willing, we can teach you some things. So as you can see, the little boy had a yo-yo, and in this one right here manifested the yo-yo into one of his familiars, animal familiars, or his totem, which is the owl. And you already know what the owl represents. That's the one that's able to see through different dimensions, able to turn its head almost backwards and stuff like that, to see at many angles and to see through the dark, through the darkness. So may tell you who that one was that made his yo-yo into Dr. Occultus. Yeah, that's Dr. Occultus that did that. So basically they take him through different realms. They walk him through different realities. They show them the very spark of the beginning of our universe. He's witnessing, showing on a so-called mythology level, through the biblical level, the fall of Lucifer, the archangels, the creation of different suns and universes. And he goes into even certain civilizations like Atlantis and Lemuria, being destroyed, and you have these key figures that he's able to interact with in these different realms, and they're telling him there's a price to pay with magic. There's a price to pay once you open your eyes to these different type of worlds. There's no turning back. You know what I mean? He talks about how he's showing the boy that the magic has always been around, a part of many different people's different cultures. You know, it's the art of trance. When we look at the people that learn how to traverse various realms. It's about the art of trance, the art of being able to go through different states of reality, be it through sound, be it through drumming, be it through dancing, be it through certain plant medicine, different things. And it's showing you how different cultures from around the world dealt with the level of magic. And also he's showing the young man also how at one point in time magic was demonized because of the level of coming through the religious and scientific age. There came the level of persecution and how many people were burned at the stake, different things, tortured, even killed because the people that did not know how to go through these realms were looked at as evil. All right. But even within the scientific age, even in the religious age, that there always been magicians, and some of them would be right in front of our face, you know, doing little magic shows and knowing that how to hide within the world because the world weren't ready to accept people of that nature. What I find interesting about this book is that you have many different factions when we deal with duality. You have those that want to teach the young man how to deal with magic from a positive level, right? For the benefit of humanity and sentient beings. And then you have also had those who dealt with a more darker aspect that wanted to use this young man because they knew how powerful he was going to be. And also what I found was interesting too is that every time John Constantine, he's trying to get him to a place of safety because they know the hit is out on this young man, that he has random people that he might see on the like for instance, they were walking and next thing you know, John Constantine has them on the plane. And random people are talking to him. He's sitting next to a dude on the plane and how showing how spirits can come into people. So he has a spirit that been following him to make sure he's trying to warn him like, yo, you got this other side. They want to take you out because they know how powerful you are. You know, and this particular spirit is called Mr. Boston, Boston Brand. And you'll see him through this whole comic book jumping through different people. And the people that he inhabits their body at the moment, it's like they're in a trance for a second. So he's trying to tell them, be careful, da da da, boom, boom, boom. And next thing you know, the spirit leaves the person and they're like, huh, what happened? You know what I mean? Um, let me see here. Um, Like, yeah, he goes for another dude. He's in travels, and next thing you know, spirit this dude named Mr. Boston is trying to hip the kid to what's happening. And next thing you know, the spirit leaves the dude, and he's like, "Huh? What brand? Nah, my name is so and so. I was feeling kind of sort of dizzy. You know what I mean? But trance is real. At that point, it was a homeless man who a spirit came into him and knocked this woman out who's working for a more darker side of and trying to assassinate the young boy. So long story short, I think this comic book is very interesting. Takes him through the fairy realm, through the magical realms. And what was so deep to me is even when he takes him, Mr. E actually takes him towards the end of time, towards the end of the universe. Now he's walking him through time, millions and millions of years. Where all kinds of things happening, like what I was talking about earlier in my video, the other video before it got cut off, the disclosure, the ability of space travel, Star Brothers and Sisters, all kinds of different things. He's witnessing all this, and people that have gone through transcendental meditation or have had any type of mystical experience or even dealt with the ethogenic medicine or the psychedelic medicine, if you even come from the level of a very high dose mushroom journey or a very high dealing with very high dose of the medicine, you'll see that time and space can be very different. You know, what we look at as 5 minutes that went by or hour that went by, there's times where you could feel like you've stepped out of the realm of time and space, right? And we experience that all the time. We could experience that even as children. And you know damn well when you was a kid or a child, and it was the summertime, you know, you be outside playing with your friends all day, and it would feel like hours and hours would go by. You know what I mean? And as we go become adult, next thing you know, you be like, damn, man, time went by so fast. Like I just got up and feel like the sun went down already, you know? So our perception of time is very interesting. I remember I heard about this one dude, he sealed himself up in this enclosed area for several months. He had the food, everything that he need, but it was at a place where he was even closed off from any light, so he wouldn't know it when the sun came up or down. He said time became very different for him, you know. So yeah, so this young man is walking through millions of years, you know, which in his perspective only seems maybe about an hour or so that went by. And this and when he's encountering here is future humans. You know, they got to a point where they became mutated because our sun was dying, and there was a lot of things that was happening to planet Earth, and this being was trying to communicate with him to say, well, how was it during the past? How would, and the young boy was like, man, you know, I can't explain. Like it was different. Like, look at y'all. Y'all look green, crazy, you know, and it kind of reminds me of like some UFOologists, what they talk about, even the grays or different things, and saying these are certain beings from the future, you know. So then he walks them to the very edge of time, you know, and them on the other side, John Constantine and the rest, they're like, yo, you know, we should check up on homie. It seemed like Mr. E had him out there for a minute. So the plot was that Mr. E was trying to assassinate the young man because, again, he felt like from another parallel universe that this young man was going to be a problem. But he went to all the way to the edge of time. You know what I mean? Where he even had these archetypical energies of the king, the Joker, different things. And coming from the place of beyond space, it was very, very, very esoteric, you know? But it got to a place where Mr. E, tried to take him out, and the spirit of death came through and it's like, nah, we ain't having that. And I already took you out a long time ago, so I ain't letting you go out like this. This is not how you supposed to unfold. Long story short, this book was ill. I was like, man, they took me on a journey, you know? And I was like, man, this right here seemed like a whole journey within itself. So I say check it out. And the last one I'm going to say to check it out is about my homie again, Jodorowsky. Again, this one is the White Llama. The White Llama. Man, there's so many jewels in this book. It's crazy. All right. First of all, from a very esoteric level of certain exercises and different things, from an energetic level of doing Tai Chi, Qigong, doing other practices like Xing Yi and Bagua and different things. This Kriya Yoga and stuff, right? This dropped some very esoteric exercises in here. If you wasn't one to go through those schools of thought or had those initiations, it would just go right over your head. You wouldn't. You was like, wow, this is just entertainment. But there's some things in here. That's all I'm gonna say. And what brings to my mind on this book as well is like so many weeks ago they caught these Buddhist so-called Buddhist monks with so many pounds of herb and and I believe heroin as well. So a lot of people are like, oh my goodness, they're supposed to be monks or whatever. It's not a reflection of the Buddhist teachings or whatever. They're always gonna be someone within the bunch that gonna go rogue and do their own thing. That shouldn't be a reflection of the teachings, because I do believe there are some very deep teachings within the Buddhist context. You know what I mean? In the early 2000s, I was studying Tibetan Buddhism, and I took a lot of different empowerments at that time, and I met a lot of amazing different Rinpoches and lamas. And these people were very deep, in my opinion. Big up to Garchen Rinpoche. He was one of the elders I met back in the day, and I'll never forget when he's talked about the fast running technique which they have in this book here, right? And I'll never forget. He couldn't. This elder couldn't really speak English like that, so he had this interpreter, and he did this motion with his fingers like this. He's like, "Yeah, they do this in my country," So basically, they would put these magical seals on their feet. They would paint it on their feet. These magical mantras, and they would do their whole ritual to the point where they're like, y'all ever seen the Jedi in Star Wars when they would run super fast or make these super fast moves? That's I'm telling you, a lot of things you be seeing in these movies, they get it from somewhere. That's how some of these monks would be able to do that. Jump over very high places, run super fast. And they show that in this book with one of the characters in here. Somebody just said something in here. Uh hold on. Somebody says, "Do I catch up with you on Facebook?" Yeah, you can always hit me up on Facebook. Yeah, it's Bro Dooley on Facebook. BRO bro and then Dooley. DULI. Um someone says look forward to more lives. You should do a live strictly talking about the best anime and one on the best comics, etc. Yeah, that'd be dope. Definitely, I'm down for something like that. Somebody says Umane Peme Hong. Definitely. Definitely. That's Chinrizi right there. Uh yeah, and Chinrizi is that's one of the empowerments I actually got from Garchun Rinpoche. That's dealing with the Bodhisattva Chinrizi that deals with issuing in the level of love and compassion and wisdom, is one of my favorite chants within the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. Do you still offer your healing services? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I'm in the Boston area. If you ever want to come out and check me, we could arrange that. Sometimes people will come out here, get an Airbnb, come out here like 3 days or whatever, and I offer a lot of my different services. My some of my medicines, some of the psychic surgeries, different things like that. So yeah, hit me up. I'm still there for folk. We just gotta just arrange it. All right. But yeah, this what's interesting about this book is that is talking about we can't get caught up in the outward thing. A lot of people get caught up in the outward thing. If it look like it must be it. So some people just say, oh, because they got the saffron robes on, or if they do the chanting, or if they look like they're very super calm and stuff like that, Oh, they must be very spiritual. Oh, they must be very enlightened. You know, oh, I've never heard him or her raise their voice before. Oh, I never heard him or her swear before. Oh, that person doesn't smoke or drink or they don't eat any meat. They must be very enlightened. You know, it's a bunch of hogwash. I'm gonna tell you. And when we deal with what we're talking about, an enlightened being or a self-realized being, that has nothing to do with the makeup of the outer. All right. Um, it has nothing to do with that. A lot of people could play the part, you know. And I hate to say it, a lot of people who don't have discernment or exercise their intuition fall for the okey doke. They get caught up real quick, and it's not anyone's fault. I'm not saying that, but some people who might be new to the path, or new to learning things outside of the box of organized religion and want to learn more deeper aspects of themselves. Um, some people are gullible, and some people will throw people on the pedestal and look up to someone to think they supposed to save their ass. You know what I mean? It was never meant for that. Every mystic, every self-realized being throughout the universe, multiverse, all said the same thing: that you and God are one, that you are the reflection of the all. You know what I mean? That there's no separation. You are that essence itself. Beings, poets like Hafiz and Rumi, all saying the same thing. Like, you are symbolic of the drop of water that enters the ocean, and you become one with, as you are now the ocean. These are all symbolic gestures to kind of describe the undescribable. You know. Um, but this is a personal journey that we all have to take. And it's a personal journey of your own awakening, not somebody else's, not the comparison of you and someone else, or may join this group over here, or you know what I mean? No, it's your own personal journey. Very much so. And as I'm getting older with in my own age, I'm seeing that much more clearer each day. Um, so so it's showing you the corruption within the monastic tradition in the Buddhist context, and it gets corrupted. And what's so interesting is that there's a particular lama who, and that's the Umane Padme Hung there, is this particular lama who transitioned, and is a particular technique within the Tibetan Buddhist traditions that they call Poa. Um, PHOWA. Poa is the ability to transfer your consciousness, you know, to exit out of the physical body, or what we call death, at the will of one's own time. All right. A lot of people, when they look at death, is like, well, you never know when you're gonna go. Well, these certain masters, at the level of their own development, spiritual development, they have come to a place of knowing and picking the time when it's time for them to go. In Poa, the tradition comes to a place where there's a particular grade blade of grass where their meditation, you get to a point where you have this opening at the top of your head. The soft part where when we're babies, it opens up. And when you're able to stick that little blade of grass through that opening, that is an indicator that you're ready and you have mastered the art of Poa. All right. And they show that. All right. In the beginning, this high teacher has this vision, and he's showing that the land is about to change. And that is all symbolic of what they're talking about was during the 1950s with Mao and the Chinese government coming into Tibet and taking over. So he took that as a sign, like, yo, this things are about to change. You know, We kept the information in the high Himalayan mountains away from society to keep the secret teachings for so long. All right. And there's a lot of information. That's why the Nazis, the Third Reich, Hitler, it was very, very interested into going to Tibet because they kept some of the ancient records, not only from their teachings, but also from different teachings around the world. So this is a exaggerated gesture of poet. Of course, it doesn't happen like this, where your brain there gonna come out of that's just to make things a little fancy. But when you talk about Poa, you talk about the transference of going into light, or what they call the rainbow body. And also a part of the rainbow body is if they don't turn their body totally into light, it's the second phenomena within the rainbow body is when their actual physical body that's left, when their consciousness or soul or spirit leaves, the body corpse actually shrinks. You know what I mean? And they put that into what they call these these stupas or these pyramid type of structures where they put them in these places as holy relics to venerate their masters. And of course, yes, when people, when these masters experience the rainbow body, yes, there is no decaying of the body. When somebody passes away, so many hours go by, the body starts to smell, it starts to decay. It's like, ooh, free, you know what I mean? Now, these bodies don't decay. They don't give off a foul smell. If anything, they smell more like flowers and stuff. All right. So the master leaves, and he was basically saying to his disciples that he's